Finally, اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. That was the beginning of the prophethood. And then after that, يا أيها المدثر قم فأنذر. And that was the beginning of the messengership. Continuing in the text, the author says, فَإِذَا فَهِمْتَ أَنَّهُمْ يَفْعَلُونَ أَشْيَاءَ كَثِيرَةً يعرفون أنها من الظلم والعدوان مثل الزنا، وعرفت أيضا أنهم يفعلون شيئا من العبادة يتقربون بها إلى الله مثل الحج والعمرة والصدقة على المساكين والإحسان إليهم وغير ذلك، وأجلها عندهم الشرك، فهو أجل ما يتقربون به إلى الله عندهم، كما ذكر الله عنهم أنهم قالوا ما نعبدهم إلا ليقربونا إلى الله زلفى ويقولون هؤلاء شفعاؤنا عند الله، وقال تعالى إنهم اتخذوا الشياطين أولياء من دون الله ويحسبون أنهم مهتدون. فأول ما نعم. So here the author mentions that if you now recognize that they used to do things that are very many different types of things. The Quraysh, the Arabs at that time prior to the sending of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Jahiliyyah, they used to do many things in Jahiliyyah, from forms of oppression and wrongdoing and transgression like fornication. And you know that in Jahiliyyah, despite those evils they used to engage in, they also used to do some types of worship. The mushrikun, the Quraysh, they used to do some types of worship that they sought closeness to Allah via. For example, it is known that the mushrikun used to do Hajj and Umrah. They used to do Hajj and Umrah. But we know that when they used to do Hajj and Umrah, the mushrikun in Jahiliyyah, they used to do that, but they used to do it in a way that was actually still shirk. Because when we do Hajj, we say Labbaik Allahumma Labbaik, Labbaik la sharika laka Labbaik, Labbaik la sharika laka Labbaik. Labbaik, that, oh Allah, I am here in your subservience. I am here answering your call to do your worship. Labbaik Allahumma Labbaik, Labbaik la sharika laka Labbaik. No partner to you, la sharika laka. You affirm the Tawhid of Allah when you're doing Hajj. Labbaik Allahumma Labbaik, Labbaik la sharika laka Labbaik. That I am here answering your call, O Allah, here in your subservience, you alone without any partners, for you alone. But the mushrikun, what did they used to say? When they used to do Hajj, Labbaik Allahumma Labbaik, Labbaik la sharika laka Labbaik, illa sharikun huwa lak, tamlikuhu wa ma malakak. They would add on this extra line that, oh Allah, we are here in subservience to worship you, you alone without any partners, except maybe for a partner that you may have, but you are in control over him, not he over you. So they were affirming partners to Allah. They were affirming partners to him, saying that La sharika laka labbaik illa sharikun huwa lak, except a partner that you may have, that you do have. They were affirming partners to Allah in their talbiyah. Shirk in their talbiyah. When they were saying labbaik Allahumma labbaik, they were adding on the extra line, affirming partners to Allah. And we know about how they used to do the tawaf. They used to do it naked around the Kaaba. So they used to do all of those types of things. They used to do these worships of Hajj and Umrah, but with all of the deficiencies and the misguidances in them. And الصدقة على المساكين والإحسان إليهم وغير ذلك. And they would give charity to those in need and in poverty, and they would be good. They would do goodness to the people. It was known about the Arabs even before the sending of the messenger in Jahiliyyah. They had the respect of honoring guests, for example, that they would honor their guests and they would give in charity and they would do certain acts of worship at that time. And that was why? Because of the leftovers or what came to them from the religion of Ibrahim alayhi salam. هذا عندهم بقايا من دين إبراهيم عليه السلام كانوا يحجون ويعتمرون وكانوا يتصدقون على المحتاجين. هذه الأفعال طيبة لكن ليس معها توحيد. So even though they used to do the Hajj, the Umrah in the way that they did, and give charity and be good to the neighbors and honor the guests, and they used to do those actions of goodness from what had come to them from the remnants of the religion of Ibrahim alayhi salam, but they were doing all of these actions without the basis of Tawhid. They were worshipping the idols and their statues, worshipping the different types, the asnam and the awthan, the wathan and the sanam, the idols and statues, the trees, the stones, the stars. They were worshipping all types of things. So their actions were not based upon Tawheed. And if your actions are not based upon Tawheed, then they are null and void. They are batil, they are not accepted. That's why when you think about the 5 pillars of Islam, the first of them, of course, is Shahada an la ilaha illallah, Tawheed. Then after that, the prayer, the fasting, the zakat, and the hajj. If a person does not accept the first pillar, Shahadatu an la ilaha illallah, but he prays 5 times a day perfectly according to the Sunnah, makes his wudu, everything, and he does his fasting in Ramadan perfectly exactly as you are supposed to, and he gives his zakat from his money every year, and he does hajj, well, you cannot get in, but he does all of those actions of worship, but he doesn't accept the first pillar of La ilaha illallah, then all of his 5 daily prayers, all of his life are not going to be accepted. They will not be accepted. Pray 5 times a day as long as you want. They will not be accepted if you do not accept the first pillar of the Shahada, which is to believe in that Tawheed and to say it. You must say, I testify, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. You must say it to enter into Islam. Are there any exceptions to that?
Yes.
Huh? Exactly. Somebody who cannot speak. If somebody cannot speak, and they cannot physically say La ilaha illallah, that would be an exemption then. But otherwise, it requires the physical utterance. Physically to say it upon your tongue, believe it in your heart, and act upon it. 3 things for the Shahada. As Shaykh Al-Fawzan mentioned, say it, believe in it, and act upon it. If a person says it and believes in it but does not act upon it, meaning goes and commits shirk, then it is not a valid shahada for him if he is committing shirk and nullifying his own shahada. So here it mentions they used to do some actions of worship, the mushrikun in Jahiliyyah, but they were not doing it upon a basis of Tawheed. And the greatest of the actions that they used to do, in fact, was the shirk. That was the greatest of their affair from what they were engaged in, from the activities that they were doing. It was shirk. And they used to claim that the shirk that they were doing was only to get them closer to Allah. They used to say, ما نعبدهم إلا ليقربونا إلى الله زلفى. That we don't worship them except that they will bring us closer to Allah. And they used to say, هؤلاء شفعاؤنا عند الله. These are our intermediaries, our intercessors with Allah. Just as the people say today. Exactly as the people say today. The Sufis today, if you go to them and ask them, why is it that you make dua to the dead one in the grave? Why do you go to the, as they call it, the Maulana and all these things? Why do you make dua to that dead one? They say, look, we are sinners. And if we make dua, there's not a high chance of it being accepted because we are sinners. But this man, he was a great wali of Allah, a wali from the awliya of Allah, from the pious ones, from the friends of Allah, as they say. So if we make dua here, asking him to take our dua to Allah on our behalf, then we have more chance of it being accepted. I've heard that with my own ears from some of the Sufis right now. And so this is exactly what the mushrikun used to say at that time. ما نعبدهم إلا ليقربونا إلى الله زلفى. We do not worship them except that they will bring us closer to Allah. And so they did that. They called upon Isa, they called upon Uzair, they called upon the angels. They called upon all types of different people, different individuals, the prophets, the messengers, and all of that is misguidance. And as we know from Al-Qawa'id Al-Arba', the four fundamental principles you will have all done, it mentions in there that the people, in the principle where it mentions, ظهر على أناس متفرقين في عباداتهم, that the messenger, he was sent to a people who had variation in their worship. They were committing shirk in lots of different ways. Some of them upon the angels, the prophets, the stones, the trees, all types of different things. And it mentions in the four fundamental principles, وَلَمْ يُفَرِّقْ بَيْنَهُمْ. And the messenger did not differentiate between them. He did not say, okay, you are calling upon the angels, that's better than these ones who are calling upon the idols and statues. Fight against them, leave them. He did not do that. He fought against them all. Because no matter whether you are calling upon statues and idols, or you are calling upon Isa alayhi salam, you are all committing the act of shirk. And in the three fundamental principles which you will have all done, right at the end of the three fundamental principles, what's the last thing in the book? Put your hands up if you've done the three fundamental principles. ثلاثة الأصول. What's the last thing in the book? Huh? Yeah, but what's the last topic in the book? Huh? Tawhid. The last thing mentioned in three fundamental principles, right at the end, it talks about the Tawhid. And if you look at some of the explanations, the scholars then talk about the different levels of the Tawhid. And the highest of the levels of the Tawhid is the highest of the Tawhid, Iblis, Shaitan. The highest of the Tawhid, because the definition of a Tawhid is false deity. Huh? But كل ما تجاوز الحد من, and then he carries on. So everything, anything that goes beyond the bounds. طغى, the Arabic verb, to go beyond, to transgress. So what is the greatest of the transgression? Iblis. And then everything that follows on from that. And one of them is a person who is worshipped. من عبد من دون الله وهو راضٍ. The one who is worshipped besides Allah and is pleased with it. Isa alayhi salam is worshipped besides Allah. Are we going to say Taghut? No, because he is not pleased with that. The Taghut is the one who is worshipped besides Allah and he is pleased with it. Isa alayhi salam is not pleased with it. On Yawmul Qiyamah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say to him, أَأَنْتَ قُلْتَ لِلنَّاسِ اتَّخِذُونِي وَأُمِّيَ إِلَهَيْنِ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ. Did you say to the people, O Isa, to take you and your mother as two gods besides Allah? He will say, Subhanaka. And the meaning of Subhanaka is exalted be Allah, and Allah is free of any deficiency. Subhanallah, meaning that Allah is exalted and free of any deficiency or shortcoming. Isa alayhi salam will say, Subhanaka, Subhanaka, that may you be free, you are free of this deficiency, of this wrong, of this shortcoming of anyone claiming to be gods besides you. Subhanaka. And then Isa alayhi salam, the ayat, they then continue, and he says, I would not say, Ma laysa li bihaq. I would not say that which I have no right to say. And if I did say it, then you know what I say. You know what is in me. Ta'lamu ma fi nafsi wa la a'lamu ma fi nafsik. You know what is in me and I do not know what is in of you. So Isa alayhi salam will declare his innocence of those who raised him and worshipped him as a god, or considered him as part of the Trinity, gave him al-uluhiyya. He will reject that, just like at the time of Ali radiallahu anhu. Ali ibn Abi Talib, the Shia, they were there then at the time of Ali ibn Abi Talib. And some of the Shia at the time of Ali ibn Abi Talib began to say that he has some uluhiyya in him. Ali ibn Abi Talib, he has some type of God features in him. So when Ali ibn Abi Talib heard that a group of them are saying this about him, and the other companions, they heard that a group of them, they are saying this, all of the companions were agreed upon the fact that they have apostated. If they believe Ali ibn Abi Talib has some uluhiyya in him, then the companions were all agreed they have apostated. And they were all agreed that they are to be killed. The only thing that they differed on was how to kill them. Ali ibn Abi Talib burnt them, but some of the companions said because of the narration, nobody punishes with the fire except Allah. They differed over the method, but that's only an issue of the method. The actual point, no difference. They have apostated with that belief, and they are to be killed upon that belief. So here, the mushrikun, they used to be upon all of those different beliefs. When the revelation first came down, we're in that first chapter yet. When the revelation first came down, at that time, the mushrikun were upon all of those different types of belief, worshipping different deities as they claimed. So then the Shaykh says, فَأَوَّلُ مَا أَمَرَهُ اللَّهُ بِهِ الْإِنذَارُ عَنْهُ قبل الإنذار عن الزنا والسرقة وغيرهما. And so the first thing that Allah commanded the messenger to warn against was the shirk that they were upon. Even though they were drinking alcohol, they were alcoholics in Jahiliyyah, and they were fornicating and committing adultery and all of those affairs, terrible crimes. Yet from all of those types of crimes, theft and robbery they used to do, the crime that the messenger was told to warn them against first and foremost was the shirk. Not the theft and the robbery and the fornication and alcohol and those things they used to do. First warning to them from shirk. And this is one of the important points in this first chapter. When people, they think about fornication, if somebody was to say to you, which sin is worse, a person fornicating with his mother or a person committing shirk? But the people in their minds, they are disgusted at the first one. In the minds of the people, they are disgusted at the first one. And shirk, they do not find that same disgust. And this is the issue, that the affair in the minds of the people is imbalanced. And the recognition of the severity of shirk is imbalanced. Shirk is the sin over and above all other sins. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَغْفِرُ أَن يُشْرَكَ بِهِ وَيَغْفِرُ مَا دُونَ ذَلِكَ لِمَن يَشَاءُ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not forgive that you commit shirk, but He forgives all else to whom He wills. The sin of stealing, of fornication, of alcohol, these are all major sins. They are kaba'ir, major sins. But higher than all of those major sins is the sin of shirk. And so a person needs to recognize the reality of where the scale is. Shirk is the most severe affair. Even if it be the fornication with one's mother, etc., these disgusting acts that cause disgust in a person, the shirk should be what causes the disgust in your heart from the actions of the people. That is the most terrible crime, the crime of shirk. The major sins come after. So أول ما أمره الله به الإنذار عنه قبل الإنذار عن الزنا والسرقة وغيرهما. So Allah, the first thing He commanded the messenger was to warn against that shirk before warning against the fornication and the theft and stealing and other than that. وعرفت أن منهم من تعلق على الأصنام ومنهم من تعلق على الملائكة وعلى الأولياء من بني آدم. And you know, the Shaykh says that there were those in Jahiliyyah who were clinging on and connected and attached to their idols, and there were those who were attached to the angels, and there were those who were attached to the awliya from the humans. From the greatest of the idols, or the biggest and most famous of the idols they had at that time, mentioned in the Quran, أَفَرَأَيْتُمْ اللات العزى ومناة الثالثة الأخرى. Allat, and then Al-Uzza, and then Manat. They were from the three of the biggest of the idols they had at that time. And those were destroyed along with all of the other idols after the conquering of Mecca. After the conquering of Mecca, when the Muslims came back from Medina and they conquered Mecca, which was in what year? In what year did the conquering of Mecca occur? 6 Hijri. Who said that? Your answer is incorrect. Close. 9. Close. 11. The messenger died when? 10. Maybe you want to say 11, but it cannot be 11. The conquering of Mecca, it's too late. 13. The messenger had died by then. 8. Who said 8 first? He gets it right. 8 Hijri. In the year 8 Hijri, 8 years after the Muslims were pushed out of Mecca by the mushrikun, 8 years later they came back and they conquered Mecca. 8 Hijri. And that is when those idols were destroyed. And the ayah in the Quran is mentioned, وَجَاءَ الْحَقُّ وَزَهَقَ الْبَاطِلِ. That truth has come and falsehood has been destroyed, disappeared. The statues that were in the Kaaba, on top of the Kaaba, around the Kaaba, hundreds, they were all smashed and destroyed. And Allat and Uzza and Manat, they were destroyed. All of those idols finished off when the conquering of Mecca occurred. So then he mentions وَيَقُولُونَ مَا نُرِيدُ مِنْهُمْ إِلَّا شَفَاعَتَهُمْ, and they used to say that we do not want anything from these others except their intercession. ومع هذا بدأ بالإنذار عنه في أول آية أرسله الله بها فإن أحكمت هذه المسألة فيها فيا بشراك. So despite them claiming that they were only calling upon these others to seek closeness to Allah and using them as intermediaries only, that was not salvation for them, that was not justification for them. The messenger was commanded to warn them against those idols in that first ayah. And that's when the messenger used to say to them, قُولُوا لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهُ تُفْلِحُوا. Say La ilaha illallah and you will be successful. And they knew, those mushrikun knew exactly what La ilaha illallah requires of them, because they were the Aqhah, the Arabs that were Aqhah, meaning that they were upon absolute purity of Arabic language. They say the Arabs at that time were so strong in their Arabic language that you could pick one randomly and say to him, you stand up, give me a poem that rhymes at the end 1,000 verses right now top of your head. And they would do it. 1,000 lines off the top of their head, just making it up right there and then. 1,000 lines all rhyming at the end. Now anybody here thinks they're strong in English? Oh, these brothers, mashallah, strong in Kazakhi and Uzbeki and Albanian. Give us 1,000 lines right now, rhyme them all. Rhyme them all. Mashallah, you say to a brother, now give me 5 lines and you'll be here till Fajr. 1,000 lines rhyming, every word rhyming at the end. From their head there and then. Not something they memorized, something they are making up there and then. Everything rhyming. That was the level of strength in their Arabic language. And yet, despite all of that, because of that, they understood La ilaha illallah, an-nafi wal-ithbat, affirmation, negation. They understood. They understood what the messenger wanted from them. He wanted from them that they worship Allah alone and they abandon all of the other false deities. And they didn't want to do that. So they said, أَجَعَلَ الْآلِهَةَ إِلَهًا وَاحِدًا إِنَّ هَذَا لَشَيْءٌ عُجَابٌ. They said, what? Is he making all of our gods into just one? That is something strange. No. They refused. They did not want to worship only one and abandon all the others, even though they knew Allah alone is the creator and provider and sustainer, that Allah alone is the one that gives life and death. They knew all of that, but they refused to worship Allah alone. How do we know that they knew Allah is the creator, the provider, the one who gives life and death, and they knew it's not their idols who do all of those things? How do we know that? And also, but what's the evidence as well? That's one example, and there's more. Yes, there's many. That's one. That's enough. If you were to ask them who created the heavens and the earth, and in the ayat it continues and gives the hearing and seeing, and who is the Lord of the throne, different ayat, and they all say لَيَقُولُنَّ اللَّهِ, that they would say it is certainly Allah. They affirmed Allah is the Lord of the throne. Allah is the one who created the heavens and the earth. Allah is the one that gives life and death. They affirmed all of that. But despite affirming all of that, they did not single out Allah with worship. And that's why the question arises. If the mushrikun agreed to all of that, and they did, that Allah is the creator, Allah is the provider, Allah is the one who gave life and death, Allah is the one that controls the universe, Allah is the Lord of the throne. They agreed to all of that. But if they agreed to all of that, then why does Allah mention those things in the Quran so much? If they had already agreed to those points, then why mention them in the Quran? Why not mention the other points that they need to now agree on? So those points being mentioned were as a means of... Somebody back there? Negate what though? Sort of. Aywa, sahih, that's it. The purpose is that al-rububiyyah tastalzim al-uluhiyyah. Al-rububiyyah necessitates al-uluhiyyah. So if somebody says, I believe Allah alone is the creator, I believe Allah alone is the provider, I believe Allah alone is the one who gave life and death, Allah alone controls the universe, I believe Allah alone does all of that. Now, if that's your belief, and you believe nobody else does those things, that necessitates you should therefore only be worshipping Allah. It makes no sense that you say, I believe Allah alone is the creator, provider, sustainer, gives life and death, controls the universe, nobody else, but he's still gonna worship others, accepting that they do not create and give life and death or anything. Makes no sense. So Allah mentioned all of the rububiyyah in the Quran as an evidence against them, that you believe in all of these things. You believe Allah is the creator. You believe Allah is the provider. Allah is the one who gives life and death. You believe in all of those things, and yet you do not worship Him alone. It's a form of establishing the evidence upon them. So when the messenger said to them, worship Allah alone, they said, what? You want to make all of these gods of ours into just one that we worship? Nah, that's something strange. No, they said. Inna hadha la shay'un ujab. And they refused to accept. Same with in fact, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to it. The death of the uncle of the Messenger Abu Talib. خصوصا إذا عرفت أن ما بعدها أعظم من الصلوات الخمس ولم تفرض إلا في ليلة الإسراء سنة 10 بعد حصار الشعب وموت أبي طالب وبعد هجرة الحبشة بسنتين. To recognize the importance of Tawhid and that it is the foundation of the religion. And this is important because the people of innovation, what is one of the accusations they always make against the Salafis? You guys, you spend all your time just on Tawheed. We come to your mosque, Tawheed, a class on Tawheed, another book on Tawheed. You spend all your time on Tawheed. One of the biggest refutations on that is if you look at the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he became a prophet at the age of 40, and then he lived in Mecca for 13 years, then he went to Medina for the last 10. Those 13 years in Mecca, all the revelation that was coming to the messenger was on Tawheed. How do we know that? How do we know? The surahs that were, if you go to Tafsir ibn Kathir, for example, open up Al-Fatiha, he will tell you, was this surah revealed in Mecca when the messenger was still in Mecca, or in Medina? Is it Makki or is it Madani? Go to Al-Baqarah, he will tell you, was this revealed in Mecca or Medina? Ali Imran, Mecca, Medina. An-Nisa, Mecca, Medina. Every chapter, if you go to the books of tafsir, they tell you whether this chapter was revealed in Mecca or Medina. Now then, if you go and check that and examine that, and you look at all of the chapters that were revealed in Mecca, you open the chapter up and Ibn Kathir, for example, tells you this chapter was revealed in Mecca. Read all of that surah and it will all be the majority. The whole topic is on Tawheed. Every surah that is a Makki surah revealed in Mecca, it was all about Tawheed. Meaning that for 13 years, the revelation was focused on Tawheed only. Even the prayer, the 5 daily prayers, and they are of great importance and great value, because the one who abandons the prayer could be considered a kafir, as many of the scholars they say, العهد الذي بيننا وبينهم الصلاة فمن تركها فقد كفر وفي رواية فقد أشرك. That the covenant or the barrier between us and them is the prayer. So whomsoever abandons the prayer, he has committed kufr. And in the other version, he has committed shirk. In the other narration, it mentions, Inna awwala ma yus'alu anhu al-abdu yawm al-qiyamah as-salah. The first thing a servant is asked about on the day of judgment from your worships is your prayer. That is the key. With all of the importance of the prayer, second highest pillar, it was only revealed how many years after the beginning of the revelation? 10 years, maybe around about 10 years. A little bit of a difference, but around about 10 years. Because the prayer was established as a ruling on the night of Al-Isra wal-Mi'raj, on the night of Al-Isra wal-Mi'raj, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was taken up to the heavens on that night, and the 5 daily prayers were prescribed. And you know the narration, and there are slightly different versions, but in one version it mentions that the messenger, when he was taken up to the heavens that night, that originally Allah prescribed 50. And so as the messenger was coming down the heavens, he met with Musa alayhi salam. Musa alayhi salam said to him, what did Allah command you with? And the messenger says, 50 prayers, 50. Musa alayhi salam says, before go back, he says, before the people will not be able to handle it. In one version, Musa alayhi salam says, Musa alayhi salam says, I have already preceded you. Musa alayhi salam came before Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, I have preceded you and I have experienced my ummah. I know what the people can take. I experienced them already with my ummah. And I'm telling you, it's too much 50. They will not be able to burden it. Go back. وَاسْأَلْ رَبَّكَ التَّخْفِيفِ. Ask for some lightening from your Lord. So then the messenger goes back, and in one version it says it is decreased by 10. So then it is 40. Musa alayhi salam again says, I experienced my people and your people will not be able to burden that. Go back, becomes 30, becomes 20, becomes 10, becomes 5. And as the messenger is coming down, Musa alayhi salam says, what did your Lord command you? The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam says 5 prayers. Musa alayhi salam says, go back. But then the messenger says that I have continued to go back again and again, that now I am shy to go back again and ask, but rather I am going to be content upon this. 5 prayers, but the reward of 50, because innal hasana bi'ashri amthaliha. Every good deed for 10 deeds. The point of this is that the first decade, the prayer wasn't even established as a ruling of 5 daily prayers. Does that mean, and so that means the first decade was purely Tawhid. A decade the messenger purely upon Tawhid. And then the prayer came. And then after the hijrah, the fasting came and the hajj and the zakat and all those things. Does this mean that before the night of Al-Isra wal-Mi'raj there was no such thing as prayer? No. But we've just all agreed. It was on the night of Al-Isra wal-Mi'raj that the prayer was prescribed. So how was there prayer before that? Huh? So there's some speech of the scholars. There is no such thing as saying that there was no prayer. There was prayer before the night of Al-Isra wal-Mi'raj. But it simply wasn't what we have right now. 5 daily prayers, 4 raka'at dhuhr, 4 asr, 3 maghrib. In the way that we have it right now, it didn't exist like that. But the concept of prayer was there. There is a narration. One of the uncles of the messenger, one time he was sitting like nearby the Kaaba. Kaaba was just up ahead, and one of the uncles of the messenger was sitting nearby the Kaaba. And he was mushrik. This was right at the beginning. And he was sitting there, and this uncle of the messenger, I believe he was one of the uncles, one of his friends, one of his mushrik friends, had come from out of town, and so they were sitting together just in front of the Kaaba. And as they were just sitting, catching up, talking, a man walks out to the Kaaba. And it mentions in the narration, he looks up to the sky and then he begins praying. Then shortly after that, a boy walks out and lines up next to him and starts praying. Then shortly after that, a woman comes out and lines up behind them and starts praying. This narrator, I believe he was an uncle of the messenger, he says to his friend, do you know who they are? And his friend was from out of town. He doesn't know who these people are. He said, who are they? He says, well, that man is Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and the boy is Ali ibn Abi Talib, and the woman is Khadija radiyallahu anha. And then in the narration he says to his friend that this man, my brother's son, he claims that what he is doing and this religion, he claims he has got it from revelation. He claims he's got it from revelation from Allah. What they are doing right now, what you see. And then he says in the narration, he says to his friend, I do not know on the face of the earth anybody other than these 3 upon this way. Meaning they were the only 3 Muslims at that time. And they were in front of the Kaaba praying. So prayer existed. Prayer was there. Some of the scholars, they say maybe before the 5 obligatory prayers, they used to have just a night prayer. Like Qiyamul Layl, Tahajjud, Taraweeh, whatever you want to call it. That they used to have the night prayer maybe. And so there was some form of prayer, but now the 5 daily prayers were that night. The point here though is, all of that decade was focused on Tawheed. They come to you now and they say, why do you focus on Tawheed so much? Say to them, do you not know that the messenger, the whole of his da'wah in Mecca, a decade or more, was purely Tawheed? And then even the da'wah in Medina continued to be upon Tawheed with all the rest of the rulings, because they say, Ibn al-Qayyim mentioned, there is not an ayah, a single ayah in the Quran, except that it has some connection to Tawheed. Even the ayat that are talking about divorce and are talking about issues of marriage and women, at the end of them it will be something like وَهُوَ Al-Aziz Al-Hakim, for example. Names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala still mentioned, every ayah connected to Tawheed.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
Then just to round off, the author says, فَإِذَا عَرَفْتَ أَنَّ تِلْكَ الْأُمُورِ الْكَثِيرَةِ وَالْعَدَاوَةِ البالغة كل ذلك عند هذه المسألة قبل فرض الصلاة رجوت أن تعرف المسألة. So the author, Sheikh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, says, if you therefore now recognize that all of these great affairs that occurred, or these many affairs, and this enmity, this excessive enmity that occurred in those first 10 years, how much enmity there was from the mushrikeen against the messenger. And even the prayer hadn't been established. The messenger wasn't telling them you got to pray 5 times a day yet. All of their enmity was upon the one da'wah of Tawheed. All of their enmity was upon Tawheed, upon worshipping Allah alone. It wasn't even about 5 daily prayers and other affairs yet. So if you recognize this was the level of enmity and the level of persecution that they put upon the Muslims over the issue of Tawheed and Shirk, then you certainly recognize how big this issue is. It must be a big and significant issue if the da'wah for a decade was purely upon that. So when the Mubtadi'ah, they come in and say, you guys always talking about Tawheed, Tawheed, Tawheed. You say to them, look at the da'wah of the messenger, we are upon the same methodology. The messenger, his da'wah was upon Tawheed and rectifying the people and removing them from Shirk. Because the da'wah in those days, as Sheikh Abdullah al-Bukhari mentions often, it was at-takhliyah qabla at-tahliyah. Meaning, if you walk into the kitchen, you pick up a cup and you want to get some water in it and drink the water. Before you put the water into the cup, you're going to make sure that the cup is clean. You're not going to pick up a dirty cup and put water in it and drink it. You're going to make sure it's a clean cup. If it's not, you're going to wash it first, then put the water in and drink it. This is the way of the da'wah in the early years. At-Takhliya qabla tahliya. That the da'wah was to clean out the hearts of the people from the shirk that was in there. Clean the cup out. So once that heart is clear of that shirk, then insert the clean water, the Tawhid. This was the manner of the da'wah. Purify the hearts and fill them with Tawheed. That was the basis of the da'wah. So the Shaykh says, when you understand all of these issues, then certainly you will be from those who wish to understand the topic of Tawheed and Shirk in detail. That brings us to the end of the first chapter. The intention was to do the second one as well, but we'll begin that tomorrow. We have 3 more lectures tomorrow, inshallah. After Asr? After Asr, and then there's a break, and then same as tonight, 7 o'clock again, Maghrib, and then after Maghrib. So 3 lectures tomorrow, where we'll briefly go over the remaining 5 chapters, cover them so that everybody has an understanding of the full book, inshallah ta'ala. So we'll round off on that tonight then. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Any questions or anything anybody want to add? What is the advice to brothers who just started learning Arabic but are rushing and starting to translate the words of the scholars without knowledge? And they often resort to their own opinions, do not follow the opinions of the scholars, and argue with brothers. Translation. With translating Arabic into English, speech of the scholars and a hadith and other things, Shaykh Al-Uthaymeen mentioned there are certain conditions needed for somebody to be able to translate. One condition, the first 2 are obvious, that you must have a detailed knowledge of both languages, or you could put that as 2 conditions: detailed knowledge of English in this case and Arabic, or Arabic and which other language you're going to translate to, the target language. So you must know Arabic in detail, and you must know the language you're going to translate it into in detail. Thirdly, those 2 are obvious. You cannot translate without that ability. And that ability isn't simple. It's not just somebody who can speak English. It's not just that you can speak English and now you think, well, yeah, I have a detailed knowledge of English. It's not that simple. The brothers here who are English teachers, you give a page or an essay and you watch how much red mark, how much red writing and red crosses they put on your paper. Because there's a skill to it. Linguistics and English, there are skills and punctuation and grammar. It's not that simple. You can translate and you think, well, I'm a natural speaker of English. My first language is English. That doesn't qualify you to be skilled in English and have the ability to be eloquent in your writing in English. So you got to have skill in the languages, the 2 languages, Arabic and whatever language you're going to translate into. Thirdly, you must have knowledge of the subject matter. So if you're translating a fatwa of the scholars on some aqidah issue, you need to have some knowledge on aqidah. You need to have knowledge about that topic. You cannot translate topics you have no knowledge of. You cannot just pick up something on fiqh and you say, well, I know Arabic, I know English, but you've never studied fiqh. Then you cannot go start translating issues on fiqh. You have no idea what is meant and what the intention is and what the scholar means because you never studied that subject. I mean, an easy example is now brothers who have learnt Arabic. Brothers who know some Arabic, you've learnt Arabic, maybe you can translate. If somebody said to you now, go and pick up from the library an Arabic book talking about physics or talking about geography, some academic subject, and translate that. You know Arabic, you know English, but you do not know that subject in Arabic. You don't know what those terms are, what they're talking about. You have no knowledge of that subject field. So the third condition, the Shaykh said, you gotta have knowledge of the subject field that you're translating. If you've never studied Aqidah, then don't try and translate even if you know Arabic and English. You never studied fiqh, you never studied this, you never studied that, then you cannot try to start translating in those subjects and you have no background in those subjects. The fourth thing the Shaykh mentioned, the fourth condition, is that the person must be known as trustworthy. Because a person could have expert knowledge of English and Arabic, for example. He could even be like a graduate and has knowledge of all the subject fields. But he is known to be somebody who is not trustworthy. Somebody who follows his desires, whatever it may be, then that type of individual, his translations are not acceptable due to the trustworthiness being an issue. And now, when he translates, you have to rely on his trustworthiness, that he's translating the words and the phrases accurately. So it's not something easy. If you learn a bit of Arabic and you know English, it's not a good idea at all to rush into wanting to translate. It's not. And as the scholars they say sometimes, the ummah is not going to collapse if we don't have your translations. Alhamdulillah, there is enough out there. The ummah is not about to collapse if you don't translate this article or that fatwa. Get experience, learn properly, get to a good level, understand what you're doing with that field and subject. Otherwise, too many people, they learn some Arabic, they've done some, a year, whatever it is, and now they want to start translating and they end up making so many mistakes, end up making so many errors. Recently, I've been doing some books in the last year. We finished like 10 books, and where brothers were translating, and then one of the Maktabat Ibn Baz, brothers were translating and sending me their translations, and I edit them before the books are then published. So these brothers, they were sending me their translations, and sometimes you see that in a certain phrase, the brother has completely misunderstood the phrase. And you can see why, because in Arabic there's a certain word that is used, and in English we usually mean something by that phrase. But if you don't understand that phrase properly in Arabic, you completely mistranslate. And sometimes I've seen when I'm editing complete mistranslations of a phrase where the person has completely misunderstood it. And so this is important. It's an amana, it's a trust. You have to get to a good level, have understanding, have ability before you go into translating. Shaykh Al-Fawzan doesn't permit it at all. They said to Shaykh Fawzan, Shaykh, can we translate a paragraph from one of your books? A couple of lines from here, from there, translate it. He said, no. Anybody translates, we need it verified if your translation is authentic and good. It needs verification. They said, Sheikh, just this now, explanation of a Shaykh Al-Fawzan. Can I not just take 3 lines there? It's a nice benefit and translate it and put it in English and put it on Twitter. Shaykh said, no. Until we verify your translation is valid, or somebody who has the ability to verify, is fully qualified, verifies your translation, shows the importance of it. It's not something easy. You're translating now, it's a trust that you are narrating the words of the scholar to the people. And these days, especially, you translate something and you put it on the internet, it goes worldwide. Worldwide overnight. People see that tweet everywhere, that these other social media, whatever they are. And so that small mistake could go across the dunya. So there is no need to rush. Take your time in learning and studying. There is no need to rush. The ummah will not collapse if you miss one translation or you don't do that 2 lines. Anybody else?
You were talking about following the word of prophets and something dawah. So sometimes in our locality, when it comes to Juma khutbah. It's something where you'll see the person give like a talk first. You call it bayan. They're gonna sit, and they're gonna be two khutbahs in Arabic. So I want to know what's the ruling on that Juma, and what you understand about that.
Yeah, this type of Jum'ah, it is often done by the Sufis, the Jama'atul Tabligh, and their likes, where before the actual Jum'ah khutbah, they give a bayan. They call it a bayan, where they give this kind of sermon, basically, in English. And then the actual khutbah, the adhan, and then the khutbah is purely in Arabic. One of the reasons they do that is because there is an opinion of some of the scholars that the khutbah can only be in the Arabic language. It is an opinion some scholars have. But what is correct, and as many of the scholars have mentioned, you give the khutbah in the language that the people understand, because the purpose of the khutbah is admonition. The messenger used to give khutbah, his face would become red from how he would be raising his voice and giving the khutbah like a general for his army. And so it's admonition, and admonition can only be taken if the people understand it. But they take this understanding that you can only do it in Arabic. So then, to give the people benefit and things, they have this extra bayan in English beforehand. That bayan is obviously not a part of the Jum'ah. It's not connected to the Jum'ah. And there's no Sunnah to do anything like that. So their method of Jum'ah, it is not upon the Sunnah. But the actual Jum'ah itself would be valid. It would be valid, but we would not say to you that you should go and pray there. The Jama'atul Tabligh and their Aqidah and the types of things they believe in and the misguidances they have. If you have a choice of driving an extra 10 minutes to get to a Sunni mosque, then do that. Better than praying behind Jama'atul Tabligh with the Aqidah and the deviances they have in their creed. Anybody else? One last question because we're running out of time. Okay, it's going to have to be 2 or 3. Go on. Salam.
We're talking about the mother or the son fornicating with the mother, right? And the right of Allah as far as church. Can you elaborate more on how one is a violation against humanity and the other being a violation?
Absolutely, that's the difference. The difference is in that example of a person fornicating with his mother and a person committing shirk. The one who fornicates with his mother, that is a sin upon them, a sin between them, a sin upon himself against Allah, of course. But the other one is a direct sin against Allah. You are taking the right of Allah, and that is more severe than taking the right of another person or committing a sin upon yourself. And that is the reason, obviously, shirk being the greatest of all sins. So fornication, no matter with the son and the mother, alcohol, stealing, whatever it might be, all of those kaba'ir, major sins, are never going to be at the level of shirk. That is taking the right of Allah. In the hadith of Mu'adh ibn Jabal we mentioned yesterday, أتدري ما حق الله على العباد وما حق العباد على الله. حق الله على العباد أن يعبدوه ولا يشركوا به شيئا. The right of Allah upon His servants is that they worship Him alone and do not associate partners with Him. Over there, some in the middle, somebody had a question on. Sutra is mentioned in the prayer. The Prophet ﷺ always used to have a sutra in the prayer as a means of guarding his prayer to where he prays so that nobody walks across his prayer. There are certain ahadith that mention if a woman was to walk across your prayer, it can completely nullify your prayer. And in other opinions, not nullify, but decrease the reward of your prayer greatly if a woman walks across you. And it disturbs you if a person walks across you. The messenger therefore prescribed, it is in the sunnah, to have a sutra. And he always had a sutra. Even when he was out traveling, he would be carrying a stick. And that stick would be used as a sutra, because the condition of the sutra is simply an item that starts from the ground upwards. And the width, how wide does it have to be? Wide. How wide does it have to be? There's no width. It can be a tiny stick. This leg of the table is sutra. It can be tiny as long as it starts on the ground and goes up. How far up does it have to go? The horse saddle or the back of the horse saddle. It's basically like your arm. It goes up like a foot or something, like the length of your arm. It goes up. The width of it can be a tiny stick. The messenger used to have a stick he put into the ground and he would pray. So that is something which should be done. To the extent it is narrated that when they used to be praying and their sutra was removed, maybe they were praying behind somebody and he moved. It's narrated from the Salaf how they would move slightly to regain their sutra. If it's a small movement, forwards, backwards, right, left, to regain the sutra. So that is something that should be done. It is something that is required in your prayer. You should not just pray without a sutra.
We have to change this, huh?
What's that? That's a sutra? Use those as sutra?
No.
Allah alam, because it mentions the back of the horse saddle. So I don't know who has experience with the horse saddles and how big they are exactly. But if it's that size of the horse saddle, maybe the back of the horse saddle. One more back there, yeah.
Me personally, when I hear a football and they stipulate that they are upon completely, I stay away from them all the way, period. And the proximity to where I live, our masters are far away from them, right? And do you advise that I still do my prayers there, even though I know what these people are upon?
Yeah.
The same people leave the prayers.
The scholars, they say if a mosque, the people of that mosque are upon bid'ah mukaffirah, a bid'ah that is so severe it could be considered kufr what they are upon, then you definitely cannot pray in that mosque. But if it is lesser than that, lesser than bid'ah mukaffirah, it is a bid'ah, it is innovation, they are doing things, but it's not to the level of kufr what they are doing. It is not to that level of extremity, or their aqidah is not to the level of extreme misguidance. Then the lower levels of misguidance, it is permissible and you should still pray your 5 daily prayers in the jama'ah. The only time you don't is when their aqidah is so severe in deviance that it's too much to pray behind them, as Sheikh bin Baz said, that they believe all types of things about Allah and His names and attributes and all types of deviance. If it gets severe, then don't pray behind those people. But if it's not to that level of severity, it is possible. Like we have in the UK, and you'll probably see it here with the subcontinental people, you'll know about the Brailwis, as they call them. Certain forms of the Sufis, they have extreme beliefs. They believe in the intercession of the messenger and all types of affairs and going to the graves and the awliya. So those types of individuals, as Sheikh bin Baz said, you wouldn't go pray in their mosques behind them. But if it's not to that level, then it's permissible and you can still pray your jama'ah prayers in there. Was anybody else back there? That was it, I think. We have to leave it on that. We'll stop on that for today. Tomorrow we resume at Masjid At-Tawheed. Masjid At-Tawheed. All the classes are there tomorrow. All the classes, tomorrow evening's program. Tomorrow is the last evening. I leave on Sunday morning, inshallah ta'ala. Tomorrow, Masjid At-Tawheed, 5 p.m. We'll continue with this, inshallah ta'ala. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.